Joining me today is Max Roy. He's the VP of Federal and Quebec at Restaurants Canada. Max, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. It's really appreciated.
So let's start with giving us a quick description of what Restaurants Canada does.
So we represent about 35,000 members across the country. And our job really is to be the voice of the food service industry towards the government. We also offer other services. For instance, in a couple of weeks from now, there is the biggest food service trade show, the RC show in downtown Toronto. So it's really an occasion for people to get to know what are the new technologies that are being put in place, the new trends that are happening, meet with some of the best chefs in the world. So we do a bit of everything, but really the core of our business is really to represent the industry when we speak to government or there's any public debate, whether in the media, in the private sector, or within government.
So what are your members telling you are the biggest challenges that they're facing right now?
So right now, it's tough for the industry. First of all, you have to know that for the past 2 years, the price of everything went up. So when you hear Canadians saying that the cost of food has been going up, well, guess what? For restaurant as well. For instance, food, it's about a 25% increase in the last year. Insurance, it's about 21%. I can go on and on, but everything has been going up. So that's a big challenge of how do you actually provide a good experience to your customer when everything is going up and there's a limit to what the customer can pay as well. That's the key issue number one. The second issue I would mention too is labor shortage. It's been an issue since pretty much forever, but it really gained traction after the pandemic. We're still feeling it right now. So it's a big challenge for our industry right now. And then the third one I'll mention is just in terms of sustainability. The industry is really focused in trying to reach other levels of sustainability. But really, there is a patchwork across the country, a lot of different rules. It's hard to follow as a business owner, making sure you understand all the different rules that apply to one place or maybe are different in another location, for instance. So I guess these are the three main challenges that the industry tells us day after day.
Now, for sure, when you're talking about just the costs, I interviewed a chocolatier in Banff, and I know it's not a restaurant, but still, it's a food industry, and price of sugar tripled. So what does that do for your bottom line, right?
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think of it too, the other thing that's important to know is that the profit margins of our industry in general, it's between 3 and 5%. So when there's a bump of 5%, that means you could right there stop making any profit at all. So we're very sensitive to anything that's happening in the market.
So cost, labor, sustainability, those are the top three things. What's Restaurants Canada doing to help your members address these issues?
So a couple of things. First of all, there's a lot of work that needs to be done within our industry, and we make sure that we share the best practices. We provide tips to restaurants who may not have all the resources really easily available to them. So we try to share that information. We also turn towards the government and ask for some help. For instance, some relief. A big campaign that we did in the past year was on removing GST and HST. So we had that 2 months reprieve from GST, which was quite beneficial. Not to go too much into the details, but we're talking about almost $2 billion more in terms of sales across the country, the creation of 34,000 jobs because of that little break. So for us, if we could expand that and remove GST permanently on food, that would make it way easier for our industry. It would be quite helpful. It's not a magic one for sure, but it would be quite beneficial. That's one of the things we've been asking. The other piece, it's on labor shortage. We're the number one provider of first jobs to new Canadians, but also to youth as well across the country. And so for us, labor shortage is one of the issues we're trying to see if, okay, so we have Canadians that are here. We have also people who live in Canada, but are not necessarily Canadians yet. If there are issues that we understand in terms of housing, etc., perhaps we can try to see what can be done with the resources and the people that are already in Canada. We're asking the government to find ways to bring these people who may not be in the legal economy or may not have a job right now, help them navigate their way to our industry and help them perhaps get the training necessary to work in our industry. So the big ask we've had for the Canadian government, at least for the short term, is to look at a matching and training program for these people to bring them into our industry. In the longer term, we know we're going to need about 200,000 more workers between now and 2030. It won't grow organically. We won't get to that number without changes to immigration. Now, we're being told by the federal government that they want to reduce the use of temporary foreign workers, which we're more than fine with. We want to hire people and keep them in our communities.
Mhm.
In the meantime, we need to find a solution and perhaps stream so that we can make sure that we get the people needed in our industry, especially rural, remote, and touristic areas, because summer's coming soon. There's a lot of passes that are going to be opening in a couple of weeks, hopefully. We need the workers so that people can enjoy Canada, especially in the context where more and more Canadians are thinking about not going to the States this year, but staying in Canada. Now is the time to make sure that we have the resources and the people at the right place to give a good experience to all the customers and tourists coming to Canada.
You mentioned the elephant in the room, and that's, of course, the constant tariff threats from the U.S. that's happening right now. Have you guys looked at what the potential impact to restaurateurs is going to be, especially to your smaller members?
And so it's hard to put a definitive number on it because there are so many different business models, but clearly there's going to be a big impact. It's the tariffs themselves, but also the retaliatory tariffs. And we want to be like elbows up. We're out there with Canadians in terms of making sure that we get to where we need to get. That said, there are certain tariffs that are being proposed by the Canadian government that for us are problematic. The number one, I would say, would be lettuce. We don't have the production within Canada to produce enough lettuce for all the restaurants and all the customers. There are no alternatives that are scalable enough for us to get to that in the short term. So it means that we will still have to buy lettuce from the US. So for us, if it's not going to have an impact in the US, but it will hurt Canadian consumers, then say perhaps we can drop that tariffs code, remove it from the retaliatory tariffs, and focus on things that really do have an impact on the USA. So that's the kind of work that we're trying to achieve. And so the impact, I mean, if you increase it by 25%, as mentioned earlier, you just cannot take it on your profit margins. We just don't have that room right now to do it. So that would mean an increase in costs. The other impact that is not direct in a sense that it's not the price of food that's going up, it's the confidence of consumers. I mean, if you see that everything is getting more expensive, perhaps you want to try to reduce spending here and there. And what we see time after time, whenever there's a recession or there's an economic downturn, the first thing that people cut is going out to restaurant. Mm-hmm. So we're going to be heavily impacted. So hopefully it doesn't happen. If it does happen, let's make sure that we focus on things that are impactful in the US and the least harmful to Canadians. So that's our strategy walking in.
Now, last month, I interviewed Gary Sands from the Canadian Federation of Independent Grocers, and he mentioned their membership is already sourcing from other places outside the U.S., you know, stuff that they might normally get from California. Now they're looking at South America as a potential source for grapes and maybe oranges and stuff like that. Is that something you and your membership are also looking at?
Yes, and when you think of it, especially for the smaller restaurants, the mom and pop shops, for instance, I think that the first thing we tell them to do is speak with your supplier. Yeah. At the end of the day, they're the ones usually trying to buy in bulk or get good deals and perhaps think of new trade routes. If you can't make it in Canada, perhaps you can think of other countries, other allies that are more loyal to us for now to see if they can produce any goods for us. So we do look at it. There's been a big effort that it's been discussed anecdotally with a lot of our members in what are the alternatives. So we're trying to mitigate it as much as possible. And it's not just in the short term. I think we need to tell people that we have right now the tariffs threat, but then after that, we have the USMCA renegotiation that's coming, which means there could be some more turbulence or uncertainty at that level. And the current administration is still in place for 4 years. So who knows what's going to happen. So whatever happens in the next 4 years, the best thing we can do is think of alternatives and find ways to go about and diversify where we get our produce in Canada.
I mean, we've been talking about trade barriers between our country and the U.S., but there's also the interprovincial trade barriers that are posing, you know, some challenges. I was just in Regina last week, and I visited with the owner of Tumbler's Pizza, and because he wholesales his pizza, he can't send that outside of Saskatchewan, which is too bad because the pizza was amazing, and I would have loved to be able to buy it here in Ontario. So I know that there's pressure to reduce the interprovincial trade barriers. Do you see any progress yet?
So it's a good sign to see the Canadian government removing half of their exceptions to the trade barriers. That is a good sign, but it's not a done deal, right? There's a lot of work that needs to happen and to make sure that different provinces recognize what other provinces have in terms of regulations and standards. And for us, it's really important to keep our eyes on this for a couple of reasons. We have momentum now and people seem to be aligned, but as you know, a couple of weeks in politics is an eternity. Things can change very quickly. And for us, it's a major issue. You were providing an example of someone that exports between different provinces. But if you think about at a more small restaurant, you have to look at it from the lens pretty much of a consumer. So that means that whenever there are more barriers when it comes to transportation,
Right.
yes, the transportation business will pay for it, but at the end of the day, it's going to be the consumer that's going to bear the price of it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing when it comes to standards on health and food regulations. I mean, in Canada, I think in general, I can say that I am quite confident I could eat in any province and still feel very safe about the food I'm eating.
Sure.
So perhaps some more alignment would be quite helpful to reduce these trade barriers, because otherwise we're just paying the cost for something that has no real value added to the customer. So I think that's really the way we look at it. And so for us, we're keeping our eye on the ball on this. First of all, on what the federal government is doing and taking the lead on this. But each and every province has their own regulation that they should be removing as much as possible.
Now, let's shift gears a bit away from tariff talks. Coming up in May in the province of Quebec, Bill 72 is going to come into effect. Can you talk a little bit about what that means for Quebec-based restaurants?
The way the government drafted Bill 72, it was really what we call an omnibus bill, where you have a lot of different topics all glued together. And what glued everything together was irritants to Quebecers, to the customers. What can you do to make life of Quebecers more enjoyable? So one of the issues that was targeted in there is tips and how much you should be charging or proposing even on the terminal. So our reaction was, we need to have a standard. The last thing we want is a patchwork between different provinces, etc., on what you should be putting on these terminals. So for us, we don't go and advocate for specific numbers in terms of 10%, 15%, 18%. What's really important for us was that it would be calculated before taxes and just that it's standardized everywhere. I think that just removes a question a customer might have in their mind. And, you know, if the customer is happy, then it means you're going to be making good business with these people.
Yeah.
So that is important to us. And then the second part is the transparency of it as well. It goes back to, if you feel like you're forced to pay a big tip to someone because it prompts you with 25% to begin with, it's not a good experience for a customer as well. So if you have that transparency of this is before taxes, this is the amount, and then you get the option just as big as the other ones of what amount you want to put, without a little, logo, like a happy face when you give 30% and a sad face if you only give 15%, then that's a better experience for customers. And I think we all win when we do this. And so once that is done in Quebec, our point is really, let's try as an industry to set the bar in terms of transparency and standardize that would be all calculated before taxes. So that might help not having to put regulations in place, because it's always better if we don't have to put specific regulations. At the same time, make sure that we do treat customer with respect.
Well put. It sounds like this is very much like a consumer protection act.
It is, and it's a customer protection and it's customer experience as well. I think that makes sense. And one thing we didn't see in Quebec Bill 72 is the frustration from a lot of customers, what we've seen is not necessarily targeted at restaurants, but other industries that are starting more and more to ask for tips or prompt for tips in places where you're not used to seeing it. So there's a lot of frustration about not only the levels of it, but where you should be giving tips. So that's something we didn't see in the Quebec bill that perhaps they could revisit eventually and make sure that it's targeted to industries where tip makes sense.
It certainly does feel like it's getting a little out of hand with the kinds of businesses that are asking for gratuity. All right. Well, Max, thank you so much for the time you've given me today. Quick question. If anyone wanted to learn more about Restaurants Canada and what you do for your membership, or if somebody's looking to join Restaurants Canada, where would they go?
The best place is on our website, restaurantscanada.org. Once you're there, you'll have all our contact information. Please come and speak with us. We like to learn and understand what is your situation. How can we be helpful as an association? So don't shy away. Come and see us.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today, Max.
Thanks, sir. Have a good one.